First method, natural manifestation. The most fundamental and arguably the purest method of acquiring a stand is to simply be born with the potential. In the lore of Jojo's bizarre adventure, a stand is the physical manifestation of fighting spirit or psychic energy. For a rare few, this energy is so dense at birth or develops so intensely during childhood that the stand manifests without any external catalyst, virus, or artifact. This method appears consistently across the entire series, from Part 3, Stardust Crusaders, to the latest developments in Part 9, the Jojo lands. These users are often described as naturals. They do not suffer the fever sickness associated with the stand arrows. They simply have the ability, often viewing it as a natural talent or skill rather than a supernatural power. A prime example is Muhammad Avdol, who was born with Magician's Red. Kekyoin Noriaki also reveals he had Hierophant Green since childhood, leading to a life of isolation because no one else could see his friend. Even in Part 4, Tonio Trussardi manifested Pearl Jam not through combat, but through his obsessive dedication to the culinary arts, proving that fighting spirit can also mean a relentless drive for perfection in a craft. The mechanics here are internal. The user's psyche is strong enough to project a form. There is no weakness or cost to this acquisition method other than the social isolation of seeing a world others cannot. These characters often have the highest mastery of their abilities because they have lived with them for years, unlike those who are suddenly forced to learn on the fly. Second, method. The stand arrow. Piercing. This is the most iconic and violent method of acquisition, serving as the central plot device for major arcs like Diamond is Unbreakable and Vento Oreo. Its origin is cosmic. Approximately 50,000 years ago, a meteorite crashed in Greenland, carrying an alien virus that didn't kill its host in the traditional sense. Instead, it forced a survival of the fittest evolution. Those who survived developed stands. Centuries later, a man seeking ultimate power fashioned the meteorite into arrowheads. The mechanics are brutal. The arrow is a filter. When it pierces a living being, the virus infects them. If the victim lacks the spiritual fortitude to control the power, the virus kills them rapidly. If they possess the necessary fighting spirit, they survive. The wound heals instantly, and a stand manifests. In the story, this changes everything. In Part 4, Keicho Nijimura uses the bow and arrow to shoot dozens of Morio citizens, creating a chaotic ecosystem of new users like Koichi Hirose, who nearly died, and Akira Otoishi. In Part 5, the arrows are currency in the mafia underworld. The aftermath is usually a sudden, dangerous power spike in the population, creating users who are often unstable or unworthy, leading to the Monster of the Week format. Third, method, bloodline signal. Transmission. This is a specialized historical event that functions as a distress signal and acts as the catalyst for Part 3, Stardust Crusaders. It is technically a variant of natural manifestation, but forced by a biological link. The origin lies in the stolen body of Jonathan Joestar. When Dio, possessing Jonathan's body, was pierced by the stand arrow, the awakening of Jonathan's body sent a psychic distress signal across the world to his descendants. This signal forcibly awakened the dormant stand potential in Joseph Joestar, Hermit Purple, and Jotaro Kujo, Star Platinum. However, it also struck Holy Kujo. This reveals the method's cost. If the recipient does not have the fighting spirit to handle a stand, the power turns inward. Holy developed a stand that began eating her life force, acting as a fatal illness. This specific incident drives the entire plot. The Crusaders must defeat Dio to stop the signal and save Holy. Fourth, method, the Devil's Palm. In the alternate timeline of Part 7, Steel Ball Run, there are no arrows. Instead, the land itself grants power. The Devil's Palm is a moving, sentient geographic phenomenon, a patch of deadly desert terrain that roams across the North American continent. The lore suggests that these areas were created by the influence of the Saint's corpse. The Devil's Palm acts as a crucible. Characters who wander into a Devil's Palm face extreme trials. If a person has the destiny or will to survive the palm, they do not just survive. They are granted a stand. We see this with Mountain Tim and Johnny Joestar, whose stand tusk is inextricably linked to the location. The impact on the story is profound. It shifts the acquisition from an object, arrow, to a location. Power cannot be stolen or bought. It must be endured. Those who gain stands here often find their abilities are intrinsically tied to their survival needs or their deepest psychological deficiencies. 5th, method, Saint's Corpse integration. Beyond the Devil's Palm lies the source of the anomaly, the Saint's Corpse. Scattered into 9 distinct parts, these relics possess intense divine gravity and are the driving force of the Steel Ball Run arc. The mechanic is physical fusion. If a worthy individual touches a corpse part, it may merge with their flesh. This fusion immediately grants a stand or evolves an existing ability. Johnny Joestar initially acquires the left arm, which physically embeds itself into his own arm, granting him the ability to shoot his fingernails. Tusk, Act 1. Unlike other methods, this power is often temporary or conditional. If the corpse part is removed or stolen, the user may lose the stand ability associated with it unless they have mastered the power enough to burn the ability into their soul. The story arc is essentially an arms race to collect these parts, with high utility, reality-bending abilities like Funny Valentine's D4C being granted. 6th, method, the Walleye's Bite. Marks. Following the 2011 earthquake in Morio, in the timeline of Parts 7 and 8, massive fault line structures rose from the ground, locally known as the Walleyes. These structures are spiritually linked to the location where Johnny Joestar buried the Saint's corpse nearly a century prior. The method of acquisition here is enigmatic. Individuals who approach the Walleyes or are buried near them are often found with a distinct, unnatural bite mark on their bodies. This physical trauma forces the awakening of a stand. We see this with Yasuho Hirose and Joshu Higashikata in Part 8, Jojolion. The Walleyes appear to be a localized, slightly more benevolent version of the Devil's Palm. They facilitate an exchange. The story arc suggests that the Walleyes have the power to swap traits between objects and people, equivalent exchange. And a stand gained here is often a result of this spiritual friction. 7th, method, disc transplantation. This method of acquisition is entirely unique to the events of Part 6, Stone Ocean, and relies completely on the villain Enrico Pucci. This is the first instance of artificial stand acquisition. Pucci's stand, Whitesnake, has the ability to physically extract a person's mind and soul in the form of compact discs, DS6. One disc contains memories, the other contains the stand. Once extracted, a stand becomes a physical object that Pucci can then insert into another person. The mechanics rely on compatibility. If Pucci inserts a powerful stand disc into a weak person, the disc might reject them, or the power might act uncontrollably. However, if the host is compatible, like Thunder McQueen receiving the suicidal stand Highway to Hell, they gain full control. This method completely disrupts the power balance and introduces the horror of stand theft, leaving the original user in a comatose state without their spiritual half. 8th, method, LOCACACA fruit consumption. The LOCACACA, or ROCACACA, is a rare fruit from New Guinea that performs equivalent exchange, a concept central to Part 8, Jojolion. While primarily a healing item, its ability to swap and merge genetic and spiritual material makes it a biological path to stand power. When consumed, or when one is involved in a fusion triggered by the fruit and the Walleyes, a stand can be birthed or altered. The primary example is Josuke, Gappy, who is a fusion of two people, Kira and Josefumi. The fruit exchange parts of their bodies and souls, resulting in a fused existence with a fused stand, soft and wet. It implies that stands are not just ghosts, but biological energy that can be chemically manipulated and grafted. 9th, method, evolution, ACTs and Requiem. This is not acquiring a new stand, but acquiring a new form of power that is practically a separate entity, a mechanic seen prominently in Part 5. There are two main types. ACT evolution. If a user possesses great potential for growth, their stand can molt. Koichi Hirose's echo starts as an egg, hatches into Act 1, and eventually evolves to Act 3. Johnny Joestar's Tusk evolves through 4 acts. Each act grants a completely new power set, while retaining the user's identity. Requiem. This is the ultimate forbidden evolution. It occurs when the stand itself, not the user, is pierced by the stand arrow. This triggers a metamorphosis into a god-tier state. This is seen when Polnareff's Silver Chariot becomes Chariot Requiem, and Giorno's Gold Experience becomes Gold Experience Requiem. The mechanics of Requiem are reality-breaking. The stand gains autonomy and the power to dominate the truth of the world, e.g., reverting actions to 0. It is the rarest form of acquisition, seen only twice in the core storyline. 10th, Method, the Overheaven Ritual. This method comes from the diaries of DIO, serving as a goal in supplementary materials like the Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, Overheaven novel, and the Eyes of Heaven video game. It expands on the universe resetting plan from Part 6. The ritual involves incredibly specific criteria: the souls of 36 sinners, a specific series of symbolic concepts, rhinoceros beetle, spiral staircase, etc., a location with specific gravity, Cape Canaveral, and the destruction of one's own stand to be reborn. In the game, this allows the resulting stand, the world over heaven, to rewrite reality with its fists, representing the philosophical endpoint of stand power, the ability to rewrite fate. 11th, Method, Viral Sachar Chemical Induction. In the light novel Purple Haze Feedback, which explores the aftermath of Part 5, the idea that stands can be triggered by pharmacological means is introduced. The lore here leans into the scientific explanation of the stand virus. If the arrow carries a virus, then that virus can theoretically be isolated, synthesized, and injected. The novel features characters in the darker side of the Passion Mafia who have acquired or enhanced abilities through drugs and chemical experimentation that mimic the meteorite's viral signature. This recontextualizes the supernatural power as a phenomenon that can be grounded in hard, gritty science. 12th, Method, Empathic to Psychological Manifestation. This method is explored in the light novel Golden Heart, Golden Ring, where a character named Coniglio acquires the Stand the Cure. Unlike the violent fighting spirits of the main series, her stand is born purely from an overwhelming desire to heal and protect. The method here is empathic resonance. There is no arrow, no bloodline curse, no devilish desert. The stand manifests solely because her emotional state reaches a critical mass of compassion. This expands the lore to suggest that fighting spirit is a misnomer, that passion in any form, if strong enough, can birth a stand. 13th, Method, Possession and the Bound Spirit. This method involves an existing stand or spirit possessing a user or object. In the main storyline Part 3, the stand Anubis is bound to a sword. It does not have a user. It captures users. If you pick up the sword, Anubis overrides your mind, enslaving you to the stand. This concept is expanded in the spin-off series Thus Spoke Rohan Kishibe. Rohan encounters entities that are stand-like, but are bound to mountains, painting frames, or specific cursed objects. For example, a painting in the Louvre carries a curse that functions identically to a stand attack. The user doesn't get the stand. They become a carrier for it. 14th, Method, the Multiversal Wound. In the wildly experimental novel Jorge Joestar, which is not part of the main continuity, the concept of wounds is introduced. In the 37th universe depicted, characters do not have stands in the traditional sense. They have wounds. A wound is a trauma given physical form. It is similar to a stand but rooted entirely in psychological damage and physical injury. This recontextualizes acquisition. You don't get power because you are strong, you get power because you are broken. It is a darker, more twisted mirror of the traditional stand philosophy. Summary of Impact and Aftermath. Across all these methods, from the ancient meteorite to the modern walleyes, one rule remains absolute. The stand reflects the soul. Whether you are pierced by an arrow, survive a desert, or inherit a curse, the power you receive is a mirror of who you are. The arrow might kill the weak, but it grants the serial killer Yoshikage Kira a power suited for hiding, Killer Queen. The Devil's Palm might kill the unprepared, but it grants the crippled Johnny Joestar a power based on movement and rotation, Tusk. The method of acquisition determines the start of the journey, but the user's spirit determines the limit. The constant evolution and discovery of new methods ensure that the pursuit of power and the ethical questions it raises continue to drive the narrative forward in every single JoJo's Bizzare adventure arc.